for adult formation in pastoral care, and it's a pleasure to have you again here this morning. This morning, our presenter is somebody near and dear to us, Dr. Patrick Scott. So as you know, Patrick is our music director, organist, choir master, and he also serves as the artistic director for the Memphis Boys and Girls Choir. He is a native of Mississippi. He studied organ at Birmingham Southern College, then went to the University of Texas at Austin, where he did his master's and doctorate in organ. And while a student there, he traveled around the world, learning about our Anglican choral tradition and evensong and boys and girls choirs. Before coming to GSL, he worked at the Cathedral of St. Philip in Atlanta for 5 years. And throughout his career, he has performed around the world. He has presented and lectured at scores of professional musician events, earned numerous awards for musical excellence, and his talent is obvious to us every week. Today, we asked him to speak about the role of evensong in our Anglican heritage, and he is here to do that. But first, let's have a word of prayer, and I'm going to draw it from the prayer book. Father, your people worship you with many voices and sounds in times of joy and sorrow. Move us to express the wonder, the power, and the glory of your creation in the music we make and in the songs that we sing. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Dr. Scott.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thanks for getting up early and meeting us for formation. Evensong is one of my most favorite services in the entire world. I wasn't even sure what Evensong was until I got to Birmingham Southern, and one of the accompanists at Birmingham Southern asked me to come to St. Luke's Episcopal in Birmingham, Alabama to turn pages for this afternoon service, and I thought, who in the world's having an afternoon service? And so I went, and it was full choir, and they had all these processions and incense, and they chanted the psalm and all these things I'd never heard of before, and did this glorious music. And I still remember they did the Herbert Howell's setting of the Magnificat that he wrote for St. Paul's Cathedral, London. And Ida Belgay was the accompanist at that time and the assistant organist at St. Luke's in Birmingham. And she was in her 80s then. I actually saw her 2 weeks ago in Birmingham. I was back playing a program, and she was there in the congregation. She has to be about 93 or 94 years old now. And she was the one who asked me to turn pages. So I went, and she said, you need to learn this repertoire. You need to be in these services. You need to hear what this is about. And so she finished playing this very, very difficult anthem, and in the middle of the service, she got up off the organ and she unclipped it from her notebook and she threw it in the trash. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'll be dead before I play this again. And here she is, still alive at 94, still playing and doing well, but I still remember that. But music for evensong is quite challenging. It's why we only do it every so often, because it's a lot of music, it's a lot of singing for the choir, especially if the choir's already sung in the morning. But the service was kind of made famous by the universities and colleges over in England. Of course, they've got your Oxford and Cambridge, you've got students in school every day, and so they sing these daily services. And so that's what evensong is. It's just a daily service that we do good to pull off once a month because there's so much music to put together, but these kids who are in class every day and rehearsal every day and doing these services every day, it becomes kind of second nature to them. So I was first really introduced to that kind of wealth of knowledge in addition to this one service in Birmingham when I went to the University of Texas at Austin and studied with Jerry and Judy Hancock, who were at St. Thomas Fifth Avenue for over 30 years, leading boy choirs and leading tours, and did daily evensongs. One of the few churches in the United States that still does weekly evensongs in addition to Sundays. And so they had retired from that position and moved to the University of Texas to begin doing the sacred music program. And Another one of our professors, Dr. Hunter March, was a professor of music education, and music education, of course, normally deals a lot with children. And so he had been teaching for well over 30 years and was really trying to find some new way to teach children. And so he thought, well, they've been doing it in England for 500 years. Let's go over there and see what they have to offer. So he took a little sabbatical and went over and kind of researched and figured out a way to bring students over to experience this wealth of knowledge that is just happening every day. Like it's no big deal over in Cambridge and Oxford and London and all the different cathedrals throughout England. So he, along with the Hancocks, created this program for students to go for 4 weeks at the end of May, after the semester was over with, and most of June, to have just an immersion into this type of music and just how the kids rehearse and how the adults put it all together and how they do this every day. And so I was able to go on a trip one of the years that I was in Texas, and we were there for 4 weeks. I mentioned this in my Messenger article, so if you read the Messenger, which you should, you'll already have known about this, but I'm going to tell it again just in case. And before I went, my professor, Dr. Jerry Hancock, we talked about what this program was about and the music I was going to hear and how I was going to observe rehearsals and how best to get the most out of this experience. And he always had nicknames for students, and mine was Patrico. I played this big piece by Alberto Ginastera, who's South American, and it was one of the first pieces I learned with him. And he said, "How would they say your name in South America?" I think it would be Patrico, and it stuck. It didn't matter if I was copied on an email to the dean of the School of Music. My name was Patrico. And so he said, "Patrico, I think when you are in England, you're going to get bit by the Anglican bug." And I said, "What?" He said, "Well, the music is just unlike anything you'll have experienced on this sort of a regular basis." And so that just kind of buried that in the back of my mind. So we show up, we land in London, we go to Cambridge first. So we're in Cambridge for a week, and we study at St. John's College, Cambridge, and King's College, who was famous for the Christmas Eve lessons and carols. And so we would go to the boy rehearsals every morning at 7:45 a.m., and then we would go to Evensong in the afternoon at 5 o'clock. So we basically had our days free to explore the cities and the colleges, and we would attend class with some of the kids and just really got to just shadow them and follow them around wherever they went. And to see these kids learn this very, very difficult music, sometimes in different languages, they have no idea how difficult the music is. They're just up there singing. And how they put it together with the adults in the afternoon. And they do this day after day after day. And before I knew it, I had just pretended like I'd been there for 20 years at that point. You just learn what the services are, you learn when to stand, when the psalm is going to be done, when the Apostles' Creed, all the different things that happen. And so we had that experience for a week, which was wonderful. And then we moved to London for 3 weeks, and that was kind of our home base. And we spent a week at Westminster Abbey, a week at St. Paul's Cathedral, some rehearsals at Westminster Cathedral. They're more Catholic than they are Anglican, but they still did evensong. And we went to Oxford for a little while, Winchester. Winchester had one of the first true girl choirs in addition to boy choirs. And so it was fun to see how they operated and how those rehearsals went. And so by the end of the 4 weeks, I had been to about 30 evensongs and about 60 rehearsals, because you had the morning and afternoon rehearsals. And it was so sad to leave this beautiful music in these beautiful spaces. And when I got back, I had a lesson or a coffee or something with Dr. Hancock, and he said, "Well," and I said, "I guess you were right. I did get bit by the Anglican bug." This music that was just so glorious. And so you start to pay attention of how evensong works and how to put all these pieces together. And then I graduated, moved to Charlotte for a couple of years, and then ended up at the Cathedral of St. Philip, where they do a weekly evensong. And so I thought I had been immersed in evensong when I was in England, but you're not truly immersed until you're doing it every week and practicing all these notes and learning all these songs and all this wonderful literature that we get to do. And it was just a wonderful time to be in a completely different type of service than our morning services, which has full communion, always has a sermon. Evensong doesn't always have a sermon, no offense to the clergy. But it's just a completely different experience where almost every single thing in the service is sung, except for maybe a welcome at the beginning and some prayers toward the end. Everything else is, and the lessons, but everything else is chanted or sung. And so it's just a full musical service. So if you're a music lover, it's a service for you. I handed out just a small little document. The main reason I wanted you to look at it is because in preparing for this, I even learned a few things about Evensong that I did not know. First of all, Evensong is just basically sung evening prayer. And so, of course, many of us probably assume that Evensong somehow formed out of evening prayer. I'm sure a lot of you have heard people mistakenly call it evening song, which would be true. But if you look, the Latin word is for vespers, vesperasa, and then in Old English translated to Evensang, which then we kind of merged into Evensong. So Evensong actually came before evening prayer did. And Evensong was kind of a merge between the Catholic Vespers service and Compline. And I have some more notes I just want to read to you. Modern Evensong, as we know it today, is believed to descend from the traditions and practices of the medieval monastic offices of the Roman Church. So monks and nuns especially would pray every 3 hours. Even in the middle of the night, they would wake up to do their prayers. And each set of prayers has a title, and one's toward the evening, or Vespers and Compline. And so that's kind of where they merged. From late antiquity, which is about 3rd to the 8th century, onwards, the offices of Vespers normally included psalms, the Magnificat, which is the Song of Mary, a hymn, and some other prayers. And by the early Middle Ages, it became common for secular clergy. I had to research to know what secular clergy were. I was very interested. And essentially, it's just a layperson leading prayers, or someone who's not fully yet ordained or something like that. So I just chuckled though, because leave it to us lay people to start merging prayer services together to get out more quickly. It's been happening for centuries. By the 16th century, worshippers in Western Europe conceived Evensong as Vesper and Compline performed without a break. Modern Eastern Orthodox services advertised as Vespers often similarly conclude with Compline, especially a part of the all-night vigil. So if you've been to Evensong before, you know that the choir sings the Magnificat, which is the Song of Mary, and the Nunc Dimittis, which is the Song of Simeon. And Compline always has a Song of Simeon, but Vespers did not have the Song of Simeon. So those two have kind of become a pair. We think of them always as going together. Composers write all of this music for the Magnificat and the Nunc Dimittis. They're all published in one piece of music, but originally they were completely separate until some secular clergy got a hold of it. In 1549, these were consolidated and incorporated in the first Book of Common Prayer, which was published as part of the English Reformation, which is the separation from the Roman Church. And much of the contents of the book was produced by the scholar Thomas Cranmer, who I'm sure you've heard before, who was Archbishop of Canterbury in Henry VIII's reign. He researched, translated, and simplified all these prayers and created our first prayer book. Evensong, as we kind of know it, began to evolve in the 1500s. And it was normally sung to plain song, but in the 1500s, that's what church music was plain song. Just one note at a time. Music like we would know it today, you flip open the hymnal, you see the 4 stabs, the notes that are going all over the place, multiple notes, the alto, tenor, soprano, and bass. And that just wasn't the case back then. It was just one note and chant. And so, especially during Lent, you'll notice that we chant our psalms to plain song. We normally use Anglican chant or something that's a little more rich, a little more beautiful, but we like to get back to our roots during Lent. It's just very peaceful, and it's just a single line that just goes over and over. And we do that to psalms at Evensong as well. But the original Magnificat and Nunc Dimittis were to plain song as well, until composers got bored with it and started creating their own things. If you know a composer, they get bored very easily and they just want to create new things. Let's see. The last thing, evensong today is observed daily in many cathedrals, especially in the Church of England, which is kind of where it evolved to over here. Church of Wales, Scottish, Irish, kind of that whole western section of Europe. I created, if you look at your sheet, just kind of an order of what evensong normally is. And it can change depending on what church you're at, just what resources you have, but this is kind of the model that we use. And this is the model that we'll use this afternoon. So if you'd like to join us this afternoon, please do so. The procession normally happens just with organ music. It's not a hymn or anything like we would experience in the morning. So just a procession. The choir loves it because sometimes it's hard to sing and walk at the same time. You run out of breath. You got to watch where you're going. So evensong procession is much more calm because you're just focusing on one thing. And then as soon as we get into place, the clergy will do some opening sentences. And we pull those opening sentences from the evening prayer section of the prayer book. Now that we have evening prayer, thanks to the merge of Vespers and Compline. And then the choir begins singing the praises and responses. And this is just kind of very quickly, Lord, open our lips, our mouth shall show forth thy praise. And then we pretty much go straight into an opening hymn, or the Phos Hilaron, which is O Gracious Light. Then from there, we go straight into the psalm, and we chant the psalm. The one this afternoon is to plain chant, so just the single note. If we weren't in Lent, we would use a full Anglican chant, which has full soprano, alto, tenor, bass. The organ plays along. It's just very full and really rich and wonderful. And then we go right into one of the lessons for the day, and then we go into the Magnificat, the Song of Mary. There are very few songs from the Bible that we know about, but one of which is the Song of Mary and one of which is the Song of Simeon. Simeon, of course, waiting until he saw Jesus before he died and then died shortly after. And so it's his song as he is waiting for that moment for his entire life to see the Savior. And we associate the Nunc Dimittis a lot with funerals just because of death and departing, but the vision of dying and seeing the Savior is just very rich and wonderful. So before we get to the Nunc Dimittis, we normally have the gospel reading of the day. Then we have the Nunc Dimittis. Then we have the Apostles' Creed. And then we have more praises and responses, the final prayers. It's a little longer than the ones we have at the beginning. And a lot of it is just call and response from the clergy and the choir, just like we would do with our prayers of the people on Sunday morning. It's just another version of those types of prayers. And then we have collects. We use 3 collects, and we normally use a collect for the day, and then a collect for peace, a collect for purity, a collect for Sunday. There's many collects to choose from, but we'd be here all day if we did all the collects, so we just choose 3. And the choir, because they haven't done enough, finally gets to sing a choral anthem, just like they would on Sunday morning. The one we're doing this afternoon is the same one we're doing this morning. It's nice for the choir to kind of get their money's worth of all the rehearsal they have to do to be able to do a piece twice. And so this gives us an opportunity sometimes to be able to do that. And then the welcome. You think of the welcome happening at the beginning. We're almost finished at this point and we're being welcomed. But one of the beautiful things about evensong is the fact that it just kind of starts out of nowhere, and before you know it, you're in the middle of this service. And so the welcome often comes toward the end. And then we have some spoken prayers. You finally get a rest of hearing music, and the general thanksgiving, prayer of St. Chrysostom, and then the dismissal. And that's pretty much it. After the dismissal, a hymn may be sung. We do sing a second hymn here just because I like it, but you don't have to. And then the procession out. And the procession out is, again, not to a hymn. The hymn is sung in place. And then off you go. And this service is normally about 35 to 40 minutes. And it's rehearsals for evensong for the choir are challenging because the service is 40 minutes, but rehearsal is also continually singing for about 30 of those 40 minutes because you see how much music you've got. So that's why our Wednesday rehearsals are so important. And it's just a fun service to be a part of. The thing I also love about evensong is for Lent, we can kind of mold it with certain styles of music to make it a little more peaceful and calm and contemplative. And we have a closing evensong in May. Bishop Phoebe will be present. The Memphis Boy and Girl Choir is going to join the Great St. Luke's Choir. And we are doing some big music that day, so it'll be complete opposite of Lent. But that's the fun thing I like about any of our services, really, morning or afternoon, is to kind of mold those for the season and the experience and what we're kind of trying to go for. We just have a few minutes left because I do have to go to choir rehearsal, but do you have any questions about evensong? Clear as mud.
What's the date in May?
May the 22nd. Bishop Phoebe is here in the morning. Is it for confirmation? Yes. In the morning, yeah. Bishop Phoebe is here for confirmation in the morning. And so we just asked if she wanted to stay for the afternoon, and she said as long as she didn't have to sing. So she'll be here and serve as officiant. It'll be wonderful to have all that. Got to do a shameless plug. In April, we normally are trying to do evensong on third Sundays of the month, but that would be Easter. And so we're going to back it up 1 week to Palm Sunday. And we're not going to do a true evensong. We're going to do a Lessons and Carol service, much like we would do for Advent or Christmas, but we're going to do a Passion Lessons and Carols. And so it'll be a very similar format, but the readings will be Passion readings, and the music will be Lenten hymns and Lenten pieces like that. It will be a very beautiful service. We're using a lot of chant, so a lot of plain song from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. We actually chant the different versions of the gospel each Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John have their own version of what happened, and sometimes they're very similar, sometimes they're a little different, and we'll chant 3 of the 4 of those, which is just really cool to see the different versions right in a row. You normally have to wait a year before you see what the next version is for the lectionary, but we'll have them kind of right in a row. We've got some antiphons and some beautiful hymns. So join us for that service too on Palm Sunday afternoon. It is after the walk at Overton Park, which is around 2 o'clock. So a beautiful full Palm Sunday day. We'll hope for good weather that day too. Any other quick questions? Well, before we leave, you may notice that there is a wonderful, beautiful grand piano that is here that you may not have seen before. And if you were here in December when I was talking about music at GSL, and we had some guest musicians with us that day, and Elisa Horn was one, she's a cellist, and I was over here playing and she was playing her cello, and one of the pedals just completely flew out the back of it. And it was a sostenuto pedal, which makes everything just very smooth, and the dampers come up and all that, and that completely stopped working, so I was having to work very hard. And we had, this piano was kind of a result of that mishap. We have had 2 families who have donated this piano, and also a brand new upright piano in the nave. So you'll see it sitting over where the old one used to. The one in the nave is a Boston piano, which is made by the Steinway & Sons Company, and this is a Steinway & Sons piano, which now belongs to Great St. Luke's because of 2 wonderful families. So this has nothing to do with evensong, but I'm going to play it for you. And, I'm a trained organist. I'm not a trained pianist. So I pulled out one of my pieces from when I was a senior in high school, and it's just a little Chopin Nocturne in E flat. But I want you to hear this gorgeous piano. If I turn this off, can people at home still hear the piano? Okay. I don't want people to hear me breathing while I play.
A big thank you to Patrick for teaching us about evensong today. Next week, we'll be joined by Dr. Debbie Harmon-Hines, who is a very active Episcopalian and has done a lot of work at General Convention, work with the Lift Every Voice and Sing Hymnal, if you know that one. And professionally, she taught anatomy, embryology, and radiology at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. And she's going to talk to us about her insights into God based on how our bodies are designed. So it should be fascinating. Special thank you to all those who are joining us via live stream. Have a good day. And remember, evensong tonight, 5 o'clock.